They ruled empires, commanded armies, and shaped the fate of nations. But inside their palaces, beneath the gold and silk, their blood was curdling. This is the grotesque story of Europe's royal families, where crowns were passed down with madness, deformity, and death. And incest wasn't scandalous, it was policy. In the royal courts of Europe, sibling marriages were frowned upon, but cousin marriages, practically tradition. The noble houses of Habsburg, Hohenzollern, Savoy, Hanover, and Bourbon frequently intermarried, spinning a deadly web of political alliance and genetic decay. Though the Catholic Church had strict rules about degrees of consanguinity or how closely related two people could be and still wed, those rules bent easily under the weight of a papal dispensation and the lure of a political treaty. Health and happiness meant little compared to titles and territory. Royal children weren't raised to fall in love, they were groomed to cement dynasties. And in the confined marriage market of European aristocracy, bloodlines twisted tighter and tighter. Take Juana of Castile, born from the union of second cousins Ferdinand II of Aragon and Isabella I of Castile. This marriage united Spain, but at a steep cost. Juana inherited their thrones and their instability. History remembers her as Juana la Loca, Joan the Mad. She married Philip I of Habsburg, scion of one of the most notoriously inbred dynasties in history. Juana adored him. He repaid her love with infidelity and cruelty. When she caught him with another woman, Juana stabbed the mistress in the face. After Philip died suddenly at 28, Juana refused to bury him, keeping his rotting corpse by her side every night. They had 6 children. Their genes were a ticking time bomb. The Habsburgs ruled much of Europe for centuries, emperors of the Holy Roman Empire, kings of Spain, Portugal, Hungary, Croatia, Bohemia, and beyond. But they became infamous for their habit of marrying relatives until their family tree looked more like a wreath. Their most grotesque hallmark, a condition called mandibular prognathism, the infamous Habsburg jaw, a severely protruding lower jaw that warped faces, destroyed speech, and made chewing difficult or impossible. Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor and Juana's son, had a jaw so prominent he couldn't close his mouth. He also suffered epilepsy. His son, Philip II of Spain, inherited not just his father's empire, but his family's obsession with marrying kin. All 4 of Philip's wives were related to him. His first wife, Maria Manuela of Portugal, was more than just a cousin. They shared all 4 grandparents. She died at 17 after birthing a son so plagued with mental illness and rage that Philip had to imprison him. That son, Don Carlos, died at 23 after a short, violent, and deeply troubled life. Philip's second wife was his cousin, Mary I of England. She died 3 years in. His third was a third cousin, Elizabeth of Valois, who died in childbirth. His final wife, his niece, Anna of Austria. Together they had 5 children, only 1 survived. The genetic damage accumulated until it reached its horrific peak in King Charles II of Spain, the most tragic royal case of inbreeding in history. His parents, Philip IV and Mariana of Austria, were uncle and niece. All 4 of Charles's grandparents were direct descendants of Juana the Mad. The result was a man so disabled he became a walking autopsy. Charles couldn't speak until he was 4, couldn't walk until he was 8, and drooled constantly. His jaw was so malformed he couldn't chew. He was described as lame, bald by 35, epileptic, senile, and perpetually on the verge of death, though he lingered like a ghost over Spain. Married twice, Charles was impotent. He died childless at 38. The autopsy read like a horror novel. Not a drop of blood in his body, a heart the size of a peppercorn, lungs corroded, intestines gangrenous, 1 coal-black testicle, a skull filled with water. One historian wrote, "He died of poison 200 years before he was born." Charles's death ended the Spanish Habsburg line and triggered the War of Spanish Succession. But the madness didn't end there. Charles's sister, Margaret Theresa, married her own uncle and cousin, Leopold I of Austria. He insisted she call him uncle. At just 15, Margaret endured miscarriages, buried 3 of her 4 children, and grew increasingly bitter. She blamed the Jews of Vienna for her suffering, convincing Leopold to expel them, tear down their synagogue, and build a church in its place. Margaret died while pregnant at 21. Even in the gilded salons of Versailles, the Habsburg jaw left its mark. Marie Antoinette, the doomed Queen of France, was one of their descendants. Her perpetual pout may have been more than vanity. It was the trace of centuries of inbreeding. The British royal family was hardly immune. George III, the king who lost America, was a Hanoverian with deeply tangled bloodlines. His descent into madness, long blamed on the genetic disease porphyria, forced the crown into the hands of his son. His granddaughter, Queen Victoria, continued the pattern. She married her first cousin, Prince Albert, and together they treated their children like a royal breeding program. 9 children, dozens of marriages, all carefully arranged like horse trades. They sought strong features, height, and beauty, but overlooked the darker side of their blood. Their youngest son, Leopold, had hemophilia, a disorder that made even minor injuries deadly. He died at 30. At the time, doctors blamed the use of chloroform during his birth. The truth? Victoria carried the gene, and she passed it to Europe. Hemophilia became known as the royal disease. 2 of Victoria's daughters, Alice and Beatrice, were carriers. Alice's son died bleeding from a simple fall. Her daughter, Alexandra, married Tsar Nicholas II of Russia. Their only son, Alexei, inherited hemophilia. Alexandra turned to the mystic Rasputin, who claimed he could heal the boy, earning dangerous influence and contributing to the collapse of the Romanovs. In 1918, Alexandra, Nicholas, and their 5 children were slaughtered by Bolsheviks in a basement. Beatrice's daughter, Victoria Eugenie, married King Alfonso XIII of Spain. Their son bled uncontrollably after circumcision. He too had hemophilia. Alfonso blamed his wife. Their marriage shattered. Of their 7 children, 2 died bleeding after car accidents. By the end of World War I, the old world was burning. Monarchies crumbled, thrones were abandoned, people rose up, sickened by centuries of oppression and perhaps by the horror of what intermarriage had done to their rulers. Today, only 10 hereditary monarchies remain in Europe: Belgium, Denmark, Liechtenstein, Luxembourg, Monaco, the Netherlands, Norway, Spain, Sweden, and the United Kingdom. Many of these families are still linked. 5 are descendants of Queen Victoria, but the bloodlines are branching out. In 1920, King George V finally declared that his children could marry commoners. Still, some habits died hard. Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip were second cousins through Christian IX of Denmark, and third cousins as great-great-grandchildren of Victoria. But times are changing. In 2010, Crown Princess Victoria of Sweden married her personal trainer. Prince Albert of Monaco wed a South African Olympic swimmer. Prince William married his university classmate, and Prince Harry wed Meghan Markle, a biracial American actress. The royal families of Europe are finally stepping outside their mirrored halls. After centuries of madness, deformity, and decline, perhaps the future of monarchy will be built not on blood, but on choice.